But for this final panel, incredibly excited by this one. And to kick us off, I am going to introduce a man who has slacked me about AI every day for the last 247 days, our CEO and founder, Raphael Ouzan.
Thank you so much. All right, really glad the AC is back on. Thank you for being part of this experiment. And I'm not just talking about Gen AI, I'm also talking about running a hybrid event with hundreds of people at the same time, both in person and online. So far, so good. We talk about speed a lot and how Gen AI and technology as a whole seems to be accelerating. I think we find that, there's a bunch of reasons for that. One of which being that now things work much faster with unstructured data. We're just talking about this. Like in the past, you had to spend all this time to say, hey, let's build a data lake and connect all my stuff and structure them, etc. Well, now you can just throw even an image at it and say, like, just get the data from this without thinking about it too much. And sometimes I think we underestimate speed. Like speed, velocity to create new things is something that compounds, because we're a lot of people out there with ideas, and that just moves, at an exponential rate as a result. What we're going to attempt to do here is to have this conversation with phenomenal builders that are doing it, and to try to bring it to the most practical realm, and ask ourselves a few questions, such as, what does it mean for me as part of a company or as a company? And what does it mean for us as people? And how does it mean maybe on a broader sense? And how can we really have takeaways from this conversation and bring that to do better what we do and to plan better for the future, despite the exponential pace of change overall. So thank you for the panelists. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Thanks, Raphael, for having us. I'm Vivan, Amin. As of 2 weeks ago, I was at Microsoft. So I'm a former director at Microsoft, working on autonomous systems enabled by artificial intelligence. Predominantly, my background has been in aerospace and aviation. So I was with Boeing before that and Lockheed Martin as such. So my passions, as you could imagine, is probably drones and satellite systems enabled by AI. But yeah, glad to be here and talk and discuss about Gen AI and the opportunities.
Hi guys, I'm Tuhin. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Baseten. Baseten is a company that allows any engineer to deploy machine learning models to any cloud. So that means you can run any model anywhere without learning any infrastructure or anything else. My background is in machine learning. I've been in and around it for about 10 years. We founded this company about 3 years ago. We're backed by some great investors and work with great customers, anywhere from a couple of engineers hacking on a weekend, fine-tuning Stable Diffusion to create music, all the way up to large enterprises, trying to figure out how to get their AI models moving faster and connected to business value. I'm happy to be here, and mind my voice. I lost it this weekend, but hopefully the microphone will prevail.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rodrigo. Tough intros to follow. I'm just a lowly engineer. I haven't founded anything yet. I started my career working in medtech, doing cancer diagnosis with computer vision, and I recently moved to a venture capital fund called Georgian, based in Toronto. Although today I'm here not as an investor, but as an engineer, and talking about what I believe from the technical perspective and personal perspective.
That's amazing. Love the builder conversations. So we've got dozens of executives, leaders, dozens of Fortune 500, dozens of startups, dozens of people that are working and that are asking themselves, okay, like, how do I get started? And perhaps there are two sides to this, probably many more, but two sides in particular I would love for you guys to touch on. One is around efficiency and kind of like the tooling that we have around us. There's a thought as we're discussing this that we've moved away from the typical conversation we had about AI. Do you guys remember probably the conversation about AI, which was which jobs are going to be displaced and which jobs are going to be augmented? Perhaps the question is, okay, every job is changing. All of us in the room and beyond, we're going to see our jobs being changed as part of companies. more and more companies are now expecting more efficiency, need more efficiency because of market pressure. So how do you see that happening in companies? And to go deeper into starting to look into integrating capabilities within the companies, what are you seeing? What have you been experiencing yourselves? What are some applications that you're going to look into?
So technology, I feel, is an evolutionary force. And with this being unleashed, the companies are starting to evolve. And many industries, I believe, are also starting to evolve. Industries such as not just technology itself, tech industries, but also aviation, industrials, medical, etc. So where you're seeing the talent and the cross-pollination of multitude of how does one go and get the best, not just an engineer, but also a product director savvy individual? And how do you leverage artificial intelligence as a tool to enable that cross-functional pollination, as I call it? So we're seeing a lot of evolution in the industries as how they use the tool for their adaptation and to further explore the talent pool needs as well.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I think about it, from two separate kind of angles. The first one is like from a company perspective is that, I think we're all here because we all agree that every company needs AI strategy. That's all table stakes. I think, if companies don't adapt to incorporate machine learning and AI into, honestly, a lot of their business, if not every part of their business, they would just be disrupted. And we haven't seen a platform change like this. It's bigger than mobile, I personally think, so in 20 years, really. I think the second part of it is from an individual perspective. I think a really good anecdote as an engineer is that, we always said that, hey, engineers are going to be the last to be replaced, or they're going to be the last where, their jobs are going to be affected. I think it was Microsoft or GitHub, one of the two, released some statistics recently that 40% of code written in their code base in the last 12 months was written by Codex, which is or Copilot, which is the auto code generator. And I think that's pretty indicative of I think where the rest of the industry is going, from all the way from art to music, that's on the very creative end, all the way down to, more rote stuff. I think along that whole spectrum, we have to learn how to adapt to it, how to change it. And to me, this presents a massive opportunity at the individual level for, the next generation of engineers, the next generation of, analysts to figure out how to be better by incorporating these new technologies.
Yeah, I think you broke it down really well in terms of at the company level. What I've seen is just how quickly you can implement stuff now. It's really crazy. Stuff that used to take us months, maybe even years, now takes weeks to get something working, to get a prototype that is actually useful for the end user. Obviously,
Can you give an example?
Sure. So we recently built this little SQL writer interface that can basically provides a bunch of windows with AI agents in them that do different things. But as a system, they basically enable non-technical users to write SQL queries that query a specific database that they have access to and get answers and check that those answers are correct. And I think building that 6 months ago would have been way, way harder than it was. We built it in 3 days. Those are time scales I'm not used to, at least. And then at the personal level, it has really made me more efficient. So yeah, I mean, the 25%, 40% of code that one writes can be just autocomplete. Yes, you're still driving the system, right? It is auto-completing because you started the sentence and then it knows where you want to go next and you just hit tab. But also new technologies. So I recently had to work with a PySpark, which embarrassingly I had never used before. And it was so much easier to be able to ask ChatGPT, hey, I know conceptually what I want to do with this. Here is some basic documentation. Here's what I want to do. Write me a function that does this. And it would do it. Or, hey, I have this for loop in Python that is very slow. Can you write it but multiprocessed? And it would just do it correctly the first time. And I think that really can and has increased my personal efficiency as well.
So if you're a leader, so this is this is a big shift. So we're talking about a paradigm shift in efficiency, talking about engineering and software first and foremost, that we thought engineers would be the last to be replaced, and we realized that actually they may be the first beneficiaries, or not beneficiaries, depends who you're talking to, but that see a different way to work, squeezing down from what used to take months or sometimes years into days. And I think anyone who's done anything with software can safely say, wow, that takes too long. And it's always later than you'd expect. So you think that that's changing. As a leader in a company, what should I do about this? Like, I have engineers, right? I have technical people and so forth. What do I say? Wait, there's too much going on right now. Let me let the dust settle, kind of let it settle for a moment. Or how should I approach it? Is there training? Is there tooling? How do you recommend to look into this?
Yeah, I think the first thing you should do as a leader is buy every engineer a license to ChatGPT.
Okay.
I think
That's fair.
I think overall, I think you have to embrace it. Right? It is, it is a completely different skill set. It's all, the best engineers will adapt. They always have. I think that goes all the way down from engineers to the back office. Is that the people who learn to utilize these tools effectively are going to do. I think if you think about it from like 10 years ago, I remember Square, the public company that does payments, they were teaching their customer support people SQL. And I remember this was a massive paradigm shift, and it was rare because they were giving them this new skill set to be more effective. And I think, like, across companies, you're going to have to be able to look at every single LLM or large model that comes out. Think, what is the new capability it gives my company and my workforce, and think about, okay, well, this is only going to get 10 times better over the next 3 years, and learn how to upskill them to take advantage of that.
I think the people that are best suited to automate certain parts of their jobs are the people doing those jobs, right? And so if you can set up a system where people in your company are incentivized to think, hey, like, how can I use ChatGPT or whatever other LLM they have access to automate parts of their job that are repetitive, that are truly, that you can really just kind of write down, like, oh yeah, what I usually do is I go to this website and I look up these terms, and then I look at this other information, and I combine it all in this specific way. And little by little, find those areas that are the low-hanging fruit, where you can use these technologies to speed up what your employees are doing and what your company is doing in the long term.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's somewhat of a perhaps extreme view that we've been hearing more and more from companies, where leaders are basically telling their teams, look, if you're not using, you have to explain to me why you're not using Gen AI to do your job, not why you're using it. Because if you're not using it, you're wasting our time. That's a pretty aggressive statement, but I guess, then they would compare that to not using a spreadsheet or calculator to make calculations. Like, that would just be wasting time. So how much gain have you seen, and how much could you expect to do that, and how broad do you see it outside of just software within companies? Do you have any thoughts on that? Have you seen anything? You've seen that in robotics and aeronautics and many other industries.
Yeah. So from an aeronautics or an aerospace industry, right, we've seen a lot of shift into the regulatory framework, right? So it's a heavily regulated industry, aerospace is. So how do you enable regulators with all that paperwork that they have to take to go certify an aircraft that takes 18 months, right? That's going to speed up. The power of, I like what Tuhin said, yeah, give your employees an access to a large language model, whether it's ChatGPT, Bard, or whoever else is out there these days, because that is the co-pilot. I also believe that every single employee as a leader of the company has a superpower, right? And your responsibility as a leader is to enable or harness that superpower on that employee, whether it's through this co-pilot that you're going to have to enable that, to make their life easier, or to help them pursue their passions, which will inherently help you become more effective and efficient at a company level.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think when you kind of abstract it out, even just beyond individuals, when you look at companies, we've seen, like we have a customer called NeoTax, who's run by a great guy called Abraham, and they've done a lot of work around automation of taxes for organizations. Now, there's something called an R&D tax credit that all startups are eligible for, and now it used to be this like multi-week, multi-month process. It's now 1 day of work. That's for me, that's huge as the CEO of a company. Now they're bringing that to the personal part, the personal realm, and all of a sudden, this multi-day tax, multi-month, multi-week process you went with your tax preparer, or whatever you went through with TurboTax, and that pain you went through, and all of a sudden, that's snapped down to, hey, upload your documents, and you have a pre-filled out tax return, and not only that, you have a sense of information that you can ask your tax return questions about yourself. I think it's pretty powerful, and I think it's going to impact stuff, in your profession, for your company, and at a personal level.
I think I already mentioned, the months to days that impacted me mostly. But one other thing, you ask, what's going to happen in the future, and I think the next big leap comes from not just using these models in what we call like zero shot, where you just ask it to do something and it does it, but in building systems that use these models as backends, where you are breaking down more complex tasks into smaller tasks that the models can actually perform. And so I think there's already been a couple papers that show that you can beat GPT-4 with GPT-4 if you use the right prompts and set up the right system. I think one came out 2 days ago on this idea of chain of thought, right? So you try to help the model think through the problem in a series of steps that really expands the overall capabilities of these systems. And so I think all of these things that we've seen already are just the beginning, even with the models we have access to today, and it's only going to get bigger.
You think you can explain AutoGPT in a simple way?
I think so, yeah. I mean, the
classic AI task, by the way.
AutoGPT and this idea of agents, which I think is very popular also in LangChain, which is a framework that I recommend everyone checks out, is this idea that you can define tools that a model can have access to. For example, search, or access to a SQL database like the one I mentioned earlier, or Wolfram Alpha that can do math, right? Because we know ChatGPT is not great at math, so you can give it this extra tool, and then you give the model this task, something like, here's your overall goal. Please break that goal down into multiple steps. And for each of those steps, think about which of the tools that you have access to you can use to help achieve that step. And when it finishes, it says, okay, I did that. What comes next? Step 2, step 3. And so it's a way to have this model kind of be recursive in a sense, right? And break down this task on its own to, again, expand its capabilities.
So it's really interesting uncharted territory, it seems, because you're just mentioning something that launched 2 days ago. I think anyone who's even watched, even better tried AutoGPT, like it's a mind breaker of sorts. Like to see something that just takes a big problem and, like you said, break it down into subtasks, which is what we're typically good at, right? It's like take a complex problem, break it down into small tasks, right? Kind of does it on its own. And even if it makes mistakes, you cannot but just look at it and being like, okay, there's this whole new world of opportunities that I could potentially do with it. So with this changing really quickly and the potential efficiency gain at a time where the markets are challenging and really requiring from every company, from small startups to Alphabet, to put a clear emphasis on efficiency and productivity. It seems that there is an interesting uncharted path here of company cultures shifting to enable this adaptability in the way we work. Because it's very clear that no one person can come up with all the use cases that would achieve any one goal as far as productivity goes. And it will only come from a lot of experimentation, which is something that we've never really worked on as companies and integrate into a culture of like experimenting constantly on how we work, not just what we do. So with that taken care of, I'd love to get your thoughts and practical kind of takeaways on what are good ways to integrate So like I'm thinking about different products, let's say, that I'd like to do, or thinking in ways that I could create new business lines, enhance existing capabilities that I have that are customer facing. How should I go about integrating that in the enterprise? And I have, I need to manage my risk and so forth. We talk about the compliance and IP side, but more on the technical side, how would you approach that problem? And what are the steps to take?
So I think first is awareness, right? So what I mean by that is every day there are hundreds of either products or product features that are being released with this large language models, generative AI, every day, right? Like you read any of the newsletters that get published, there's this new tool out there. Oh, we just enhanced this tool from last week. So awareness would be key, right? So to enable a company, have your employees just be aware of what's happening outside, right? And how could that enable them to do their jobs effectively or expand the portfolio? Prompt engineering, as my friend Georgian said that, right? Prompt engineering is going to be key. That's like the evolution of next, maybe a job category or job function as well. How do I call upon this large language model to go talk to it to get me the results that I wanted as well?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, one company that I look to that I feel like does a really good job is actually an AI company itself. It's called Hugging Face, that we're all familiar with. I think it's kind of like a way to host your weights of your models. They've created a lot of community around that. Clem from Hugging Face would say they spend 80% of 20% of their roadmap is very much an exploration, and 80% is the table stakes, the exploitation. And I think that it's a pretty good way of thinking about it. Like every company and every enterprise, there's obvious things you're going to have to do. If you build productivity software, you need autocomplete in your product. That is table stakes now. But where it gets really interesting is to hire the researchers, hire the people building stuff, the prototypers, and have them devote a good chunk of time. I think in classic Google fashion, to uncharted territory and kind of just making sure you don't end up at a local maximum and giving your company a shot to do something innovative and beyond just what's table stakes.
I don't think this exactly answers your question, but I think product and user interface is more important than ever now. As we heard from the previous panel, right, the amount of resources that you need to build a technical system have dramatically decreased over the last 3 months. And so to some degree, a lot of what differentiates products now are, can you build the correct set of tools and the correct user experience that is going to get people to choose your product over another. And so insofar as you can focus on that, I think that is key right now.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. That misconception was picked out from, was debunked in the previous panel already, that it's not about ML engineers especially. It is about like people that can be adaptable and bring together a different skill set to actually build new capabilities. And maybe one simple way to end this stage of the panel and open up to question is on a slightly positive, or at least a way to rationalize this in a simple way. What really we've all experienced over the past few decades is lowering the cost of building new things. That now the cost to build things is decreasing, so that mundane work, right? And now it's basically gives us the opportunity to build what we want to build. Like there's no excuse. It's just, I can just do it. Now the doing it part requires many skill set and many different types of perspectives to come together, which is I guess why I'm glad to be having this conversation with you.